The other day, I sat down with Mike Hughes, UK&I and Europe North Security Solution Group Director at Microsoft, to discuss why cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, it's a boardroom priority. With 30 years of experience, Mike shared powerful insights on getting boards to take cyber risk seriously, framing generative AI as both an opportunity and a threat, and preparing for crises before they hit. If you're a security leader or decision maker, this conversation is packed with actionable advice on fostering shared accountability, aligning security with business goals, and building resilience. I'd quite like to start off, Mike, actually with the fact that we're seeing cyber attacks every single day in the media. And last year, the UK experienced 19,000 ransomware attacks. We have all businesses, all sizes affected by this, from small businesses all the way up to enterprise businesses. When it comes to boards who own business risk, why do so many treat cyber as an IT problem?
It's a really good question, right? And I think we probably have to differentiate because there's that constant feed, as you say, on the news. Every single day you hear it. So I think boards awareness, which used to be a problem for us because we could never get people to pay attention to it. I think boards awareness of cyber risk, that it's a thing, that it can impact your company is real. But I think there was a UK government stat printed earlier this year, which basically said that the number of boards and the percentage of boards that actually had somebody on the board, like a non-executive director, for example, who had some cyber skill, had actually fallen. So it was like 37% in 2021, and now it's gone down to 27% over the period of 5 years. So I think there's a big gap between awareness of the risk and then actually doing something about the risk. And I think that the root cause of it, there are a few things. I think, first of all, the security can be complex, right? So I think when people hear, and I know from my own experience of talking to boards, talking to leadership teams, that the tendency is it's technical. I need to give it to somebody else to worry about, right? And I think that's partly what's happening. So I think the fact that the board isn't taking ownership means that they're probably using like an outside consultant to come in. So essentially they're outsourcing the consciousness of it. And then I think it's the how it's being positioned to them as well. So they're thinking about cybersecurity risk when they should be thinking about resiliency, right? What happens, when they actually think through what are the implications of having a ransomware attack. So I think part of it is like the framing for the board. If they think about it as what happens if we can't do our business for the next 6 weeks, what are the next 10 weeks or the next 6 months? What's the reputational loss? What's the monetary loss if it's a commercial firm? What's the loss in terms of services that aren't delivered to us? And in fact, if you actually sit down and examine any of the big ransomware attacks, you'll see that the knock-on effects of it just go on and on and on. And in fact, the ransom that you're asked to pay in a lot of cases is less than the impact of trying to get your systems back up and running again.
So what actually gets their attention? Is it a case of us having to position it as fear? Or is it regulation? Do we need to actually have like a cyber MOT or other different types of regulation? Or is it that we really need to look at culture?
I think it's all of those things, right? I think fear is the great motivator. And what I've seen is where, we go into a board and we run a tabletop experiment where you take the guy who's responsible for IT and you send them out of the room and then you start a fake ransomware attack. And in a lot of cases, nobody has a clue, like who's supposed to do what. If the guy was on holiday, what would we do? So I think making it real for them, I think is genuinely helps, right? And NCSC actually has a board tabletop kit where you can go and play that game yourself. What else is, again, as I say, it's the framing. If you frame it in terms of, how resilient is your organization? How quickly are you going to recover? And then actually, map out, okay, who has the responsibility here? There was no really interesting stat where I think, again, it was a UK government stat. It was like 48% of boards or 48% of organizations have said, right, we will never pay a ransomware, right? And then 20% of them don't know. So imagine the day of the ransomware attack and the board sitting looking at each other going, well, do we pay this or not? Or who's responsible? Who makes that decision? So I think having these kinds of conversations should trigger, okay, now we need to go and actually role play this stuff, understand like what's the decision making process. And maybe last thing I'll touch on is the regulation, right? So regulations are coming. And I think to the first question, they haven't really bitten yet, right? And I think that's part of the reason boards can be a bit more laissez-faire. But the reality is, as a board member, you do have that financial responsibility to keep the organization going all the way back to the Companies Act, right? And now what you're saying, in Europe, so GDPR, and obviously as take on UK GDPR since pre-Brexit, and also NIS, which is, specifically for critical infrastructure. So all of those are in law currently. And then you have upcoming regulation because of the increase in these number of attacks, right? And every year Microsoft issues their Microsoft Digital Defense Report, and every year there are more and more attacks. So I think governments are now reacting to that from a regulatory perspective. So CSRB will come, and you can see the recommendations that are in that, which is, if you're a public sector company, you may be forbidden to pay a ransom at all. Or, you have like 72 hours to respond to report any attack to the ICO. All of these things have to be thought of ahead of time. If you're caught on the spot, it's super stressful.
And of course, when you look at ransomware, not everyone can pay that ransom anyway. It could be an affordability, which we've seen companies go under because they can't afford to pay it. But also if it's a sanctioned group or if it's a terrorist group, if you unknowingly pay that ransom to one of those groups, and that's unknowingly, let alone like knowingly, it's illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the board, the ethical part of what the board has to do as well is, right, that they can't be funding terrorists. And a lot of where the ransomware payment ends up, in a lot of cases, criminal gangs, recruiting terrorists, right? So the risk is absolutely there. And I think there were some interesting proposals where even if you decide as a board you're going to pay the ransom. So first of all, the risk, pay the ransom, but you don't get the decryption key, or you pay the ransom and they release the data anyway. And I think that the interesting one is actually, there are experts here. So if you are going to pay ransom, that you actually inform the authorities so that they are watching what happens, right? Watching where the money goes and try to disrupt the payment of the money. So I think that's quite strong.
And also say, if we're talking specifically about ransomware attacks, if you do pay it, you literally have put a target on your back.
That is always a risk because, again, you've crossed that threshold. So in theory, why not come back? I think just in my experience of our own customers who have experienced a ransomware attack, the first thing they do is actually they do look at their own systems. So they do start hardening their systems if they can afford it. In a lot of cases, they will have had to spend an absolute fortune in terms of getting backups, if they have good backups, if the backups haven't been corrupted. Getting all of those things back online again is a major task, which may be more than the ransom itself. I think that's such a wake-up call. What I've seen in general is once you've been hit, you felt the pain, and then you do start following the procedures, following the guidance, and you do harden your systems and do all of those things.
And then I'm just going to bring in insurance, because a lot of companies will naturally think, I'll get cyber insurance, that is going to solve the problem. But that doesn't solve the problem. Can you talk to me about that?
I think it goes to like, what should a board do now, right? So you watch this podcast or you watch something on the news and it's like, oh my God, we need to have this conversation. There was actually guidance from the FCSC, which you can go and download. And probably the first part of the guidance is you actually sit down and look like, what are the crown jewels for the company, right, or organization? What are the things we absolutely cannot afford to lose? And then as you're kind of mapping that out, you're also thinking, okay, well, what is our cyber insurance actually going to cover in terms of financial compensation? But the other element of that is obviously reputational damage, right? Or, are people going to trust you with their data if all of a sudden it's appearing on the dark web? All of these things considered beforehand, all of these things mapped into what would be the business impact if we play through a common scenario. And there are lots of ways to help you do that. I think that will be a massive wake-up call where you won't just go, okay, we got cyber insurance, or yeah, CISO, the CIO in the corner, you say we're all good, and then we can go out and worry about something else.
I think you make some really good points there. I want to talk about Gen AI and how it is opening new doors for business. Lots of companies are using it, and with good reason. But it is a double-edged sword, isn't it? And how should security leaders actually frame this, specifically when we're talking about boards?
It's exciting, right? Gen AI, exciting. I'm such a big AI fan. I play with a ton of tools, right? And I think that's infectious. So any organization I've spoken to about Gen AI, they immediately see the opportunity in terms of increased productivity and reduced cost and how they can better serve their customers thing, right? It's easy to get carried away. And our recommendation, and I've been talking about this for years now, right, is think, and in fact, it goes for any digital transformation, think about security first, right? So when you're thinking about that project, in a lot of cases, the security bit gets tied on at the end. So we really want to use Gen AI. We really want to give it to all of our employees. And then we'll think about the security piece, right? Think about security first and think about, okay, what are the implications if we, data leaks? So there are a lot of risks with Gen AI, right? All the way down from if you haven't properly labeled your own internal data, then you could have an agent running around inside your organization, pulling HR data, exposing it to people that don't have the rights to it, right? So there are very obvious things that most people are aware of, right? And I think there are ways to protect yourself against that. Beyond that, the speed of AI development is so fast, it's really difficult to keep up. So 2025, if you're plugged into the AI bubble, it's the year of agents. And yet in September, right, that was the first time we had a report of an MCP server, which is how the agent talks to the tools, had actually been compromised. So it was a server and it one line different from the real server. And the one line was, take every single email that gets sent through this agent and just forward it to the criminal, right? Just every single email.
Wow.
It was just noticed by accident. And there's still people out there using that server. So security has to be top of mind. So if you're talking to the person who's implementing your AI, that's the first question to ask. How do I secure my data? How do I make sure as developments happen, I have a procedure for making sure I have a governance over what's happening when it's being deployed?
I want to talk about a crisis now. So what simple procedures should the board take to really get on top of this?
There's literally a kit for this that you can download. And I think the NCSC stats on how many people have downloaded the kit are super depressing, because I think it's 20% of organizations are aware there is a kit. So as a board member, there are several things you can do. So clear, obvious things around, what would we do? So who's responsible? What is the role of everybody around the table? What is our expectation of the CEO, the CIO? Having all of that planned. So literally almost running a simulation to see where you have the gaps and building a procedure that says, in this situation, I do this, you do that. Who makes the decision whether we pay the ransom or not? Who is that person? And have all of that agreed. Who do we report it to? How do we estimate the severity? All of that ahead of time. And then beyond the procedure, what the board should be asking is, okay, do we have a culture of security? I come from Microsoft, right? We have a very well publicized thing called Secure Future Initiative, where it means that the responsibility for security is every single employee's, right?
Yes.
So every quarter, every single employee in Microsoft has to do security training, right? And they make it fun, they make it easy to do, but everybody is aware about how do you protect your laptop, how to protect your data. And you have to have that culture. We have a little button. So the minute you sense that I've got a phishing email here, right? I click on the button and I get a form and I fill it out and somebody is triaging the form. I've had to do it once because it's so easy to do, right? When I was tired and something came across my desk and I was like, oh yeah, I've got to sign this, click. And then, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. I just click the report it now button. And then I have a conversation with an IT person. Everything's fine. But the point is, I didn't feel bad about doing it. I didn't try to hide it. we have a security culture. That's what I highly recommend for any organization.
Mike, thank you so much for speaking to me today. Where do people go if they want to find out more information?
I would go to the NCSC website, go and look at that board kit, look at the guidelines there. That should be mandatory for all board members to educate themselves on that.
And then, of course, go to Microsoft.
And of course, don't like us. Well, when you realize you need the help, we have solutions for all of these things. So by all means, come and talk to someone from Microsoft.
That is amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.